Captain XN4 examined the holographic display of the blue-green planet with the detached interest of a scientist studying a particularly unremarkable specimen. This would be his 27th conquest for the glory of the Zarkalian Empire, and by all preliminary scans, one of the least challenging. Atmospheric composition analysis complete, Captain, reported Science Officer Velnar, her six-fingered hands dancing across the control panel. Nitrogen-oxygen mixture with trace elements. Primitive industrial pollutants present. Technology level consistent with early space exploration phase. X4's ridge crest rose slightly, the Zarkalian equivalent of a dismissive snort. Another Type 3 civilization. Prepare standard infiltration protocols and activate cloaking systems. We'll observe for the customary period, then proceed with subjugation procedures. The massive warship, nearly 2 kilometers in length and shaped like an elongated hexagonal crystal, shimmered into invisibility as it settled into a high orbit around Earth. The quantum displacement cloaking field was the pride of the Empire's technological achievements, undetectable by any civilization that hadn't mastered fifth-dimensional physics. "Sir," Velnar said, her voice showing the first hint of uncertainty, "the planet's magnetic field exhibits unusual fluctuation patterns. Our sensors detect trace elements in the upper atmosphere that aren't in our database. Inconsequential." X4 waved a hand dismissively. "All habitable worlds have their quirks. That's why we observe before conquering." His 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern across his smooth gray face, narrowed slightly. "The High Command expects this world to be cataloged and processing resource extraction within 2 standard cycles. I intend to complete the mission in 1. 12,000 kilometers below, Dr. Amara Sen rubbed her eyes and reached for another cup of lukewarm tea. The graveyard shift at the Atacama Deep Space Observatory wasn't anyone's first choice, but after her controversial paper on potential extraterrestrial signal patterns was ridiculed by the astronomical community, these lonely nights monitoring automated systems were all she could get. The computer beeped, pulling her attention to one of the screens. Something had triggered the gravitational anomaly detection system. A minor fluctuation, probably just another glitch in the aging equipment. She was about to reset the system when she noticed something odd in the visual spectrum analysis running in the corner of her screen. "That's not possible," she whispered, sitting up straight. For exactly 3.7 seconds, a massive object had partially materialized in low Earth orbit before vanishing again. The spectrographic data showed elements unknown to Earth science. Amara's heart raced as she frantically began saving the data to external drives. No one would believe her. Her reputation was already in tatters, but she knew what she'd seen. They weren't alone. Aboard the Zarkalian vessel, alarms blared. "Captain." Velnar's voice had lost all its previous composure. "The cloaking field experienced a critical fluctuation when we passed through the planet's southern magnetic anomaly." "Duration?" X4 demanded, his ridge crest now fully extended in alarm. 3.7 seconds, sir. The field has stabilized. But were we detected?" He interrupted, stalking toward her station. The science officer's hands flew across her controls. "Uncertain. There was an active observation facility in the region. Primitive technology, but their instruments were directed toward our position." For the first time in his distinguished career, Captain XN4 felt a flash of genuine concern. The Empire's conquest protocol relied on complete surprise, the psychological advantage of appearing suddenly in overwhelming force after gathering intelligence undetected. No species had ever spotted a Zarkalian ship during the observation phase. "Options," he snapped to his command staff. His second-in-command stepped forward. "Protocol dictates we withdraw and report the anomaly to High Command." X4's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of intense calculation. Withdrawal meant delay. Delay meant failure to meet his ambitious timeline. Failure meant losing his chance at elevation to the Imperial Strategic Council. "No," he decided. "We accelerate our timeline. Prepare the diplomatic vessel. If they've seen us, we will use their fear and confusion to our advantage. What XN4 couldn't know was that 12,000 kilometers below, Dr. Amara Sen was breaking into military satellite networks, searching for additional evidence of what she'd seen. Her unauthorized access had just triggered silent alarms in defense installations across 6 countries. The first contact between humanity and the Zarkalian Empire had begun with a technological malfunction and an act of desperation, a fitting start to a confrontation that would upend the galaxy's balance of power. The United Nations General Assembly had never convened so quickly. 72 hours after Dr. Amara Sen's discovery went viral, after every attempt to discredit her findings collapsed under the weight of corroborating satellite data from 5 nations, the world's leaders gathered in New York under unprecedented security. Commander Elena Zhou stood at the back of the chamber, uncomfortable in her dress uniform. Her presence was a formality, a reluctant concession by military brass who had opposed her experimental warfare tactics but couldn't deny her expertise in asymmetrical conflict. 3 years in military exile after the Jakarta incident had left her bitter but undimmed in her strategic brilliance. "They're making a mistake bringing you in," whispered General Hayes beside her. "Your theories about decentralized command structures are too radical." Elena's eyes remained fixed on the podium. When facing an unknown enemy with superior technology, conventional thinking becomes a liability, sir. The chamber lights suddenly dimmed as panicked murmurs swept through the assembly. On the massive screens intended for vote tallying, interference patterns swirled into focus, resolving into an alien face. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on a smooth gray face. "Esteemed leaders of Earth," the face announced in flawless English, "I am Ambassador Trollvaya of the Zarkalian Empire. We come in peace and will arrive to address you personally in exactly 7 minutes." The screens went dark, plunging the chamber into chaos. Security personnel rushed the world leaders toward exits, while military officers barked into communication devices. Elena remained motionless, her mind calculating, analyzing. "They're coming here." General Hayes looked pale. "How did they tap into our secure systems so easily?" Elena's response was cut short by a deafening rumble that shook the building to its foundation. Through the chamber's glass ceiling, a massive crystalline vessel materialized directly overhead, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly iridescence against the blue sky. "Everyone remain calm," shouted the Secretary General, who had refused evacuation. If they meant immediate harm, they wouldn't announce themselves. Precisely 7 minutes after the message, a column of shimmering light appeared at the center of the chamber. From it stepped a tall, slender figure in flowing silver robes. Ambassador Trollvaya was flanked by 2 guards whose exoskeletal armor made them appear more machine than biological. "Greetings," Trollvaya's voice resonated unnaturally throughout the hall. "We come to offer you the protection and guidance of the Zarkalian Empire, the most advanced civilization in this galactic sector." The ambassador activated a device on his wrist. A holographic display expanded above him, showing spectacular images of planets, star systems, and alien species. "For 12,000 years, we have brought order and advancement to primitive worlds," he continued, gesturing at the display. "Your species has potential that could be nurtured under our benevolent oversight." Elena noticed something strange. The ambassador's translator device emitted a barely perceptible flicker with each word, and a subtle discrepancy between his lip movements and the English translation. Then it happened. The device sparked visibly, and Trollvaya's next words came through unfiltered. "These humans will make excellent resource extractors before extermination. Their biological composition suggests high efficiency in the toxic mining operations on Sector 9 planets." The ambassador continued speaking, oblivious to the horrified expressions spreading through the assembly as his true intentions were broadcast. The holographic display shifted to show scenes that his speech was clearly not describing. Images of alien species in forced labor camps, planets being systematically stripped of resources, entire civilizations reduced to servitude. "The terms of our protection are simple," Trelvia concluded, while the malfunctioning translator revealed. Resistance is historically futile but provides useful data on species weaknesses. We recommend surrender within 48 hours to minimize population losses during the subjugation phase. Alina was already moving, slipping through the shocked crowd toward the ambassador. She saw the moment Trelvia's composure faltered. His breathing became labored, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in sequence. The ambassador suddenly clutched at his throat, his gray skin taking on a purplish tinge. As Trelvia collapsed to the floor in what appeared to be an allergic reaction to Earth's atmosphere, pandemonium erupted. The security guards rushed forward as the alien guards raised weapons. In the chaos, Alina made her move. Captain Xen4 paced the command deck of his flagship, his ridge crest fully extended in agitation. The massive viewscreen showed multiple scans of Earth's surface, each displaying the same confounding result. Emptiness. Explain again how an entire primitive species has vanished, he demanded. Science Officer Velnar's voice trembled slightly. The ultimatum deadline passed 12 hours ago, Captain. When we received no response, we initiated standard intimidation protocols by targeting their largest population center. Binge, interrupted the tactical officer. 17 million life forms. But sensors showed no biological signatures upon weapons lock. Velnar continued. We've subsequently scanned 23 major population centers. All showed the same pattern. Functional infrastructure, power generation, and electronic emissions, but no significant biological presence. Xen4 slammed a fist against the control panel. Impossible. A pre-space flight civilization cannot evacuate billions of individuals without our detection. Nevertheless, sir, they have. The command deck fell silent. In 12,000 years of conquest, the Zarkalian Empire had never encountered such a situation. Deploy ground reconnaissance units. Xen4 finally ordered. Full environment suits as a precaution. Ambassador Trelvia's reaction to their atmosphere suggests unknown biohazards. 5 kilometers beneath Beijing's empty streets, in a hastily expanded section of an ancient nuclear bunker, President Chen of China shared a cramped monitoring station with Alina Zhao and her improbable team. They've taken the bait, Alina said, watching drone feeds of the alien landing parties exploring the deserted city. Operation Ghost Town is working. Kira Namvate, the South African hacker wanted in 12 countries, looked up from her array of screens. The holographic emitters are holding. They still think they're seeing functioning infrastructure. How long until they realize they're walking through sophisticated projections? President Chen asked. Hard to say, replied Dr. Vikram Singh, the xenobiologist. But their movements suggest sensory processing very different from ours. They seem almost confused by empty space. The 4th member of Alina's team, former Special Forces operator Jackson Cole, studied the alien movements with professional detachment. They've never fought anyone who wasn't where they expected them to be, he observed. Their tactics are meticulous but inflexible. No improvisation. Alina nodded. That's our advantage. While they're searching cities, Operation Mole proceeds. Across the room, a communications officer raised her hand. Commander Zhao, Sydney team reports acquisition of target. A cheer went up from the crowded bunker. On the main screen, grainy footage showed a team of miners using retrofitted drilling equipment to tunnel up beneath a landed Zarkalian scout ship. As they watched, the team breached the vessel's underside and deployed what looked like ordinary fire extinguishers. Pepper spray? President Chen asked incredulously. Capsaicin aerosol, Alina corrected. Dr. Sain's analysis of the ambassador's reaction suggested their respiratory membranes are hypersensitive to Earth's organic compounds. We're fighting with what we have. The footage showed the alien crew collapsing almost instantly upon exposure. Within minutes, Earth forces secured the ship with minimal casualties. First capture confirmed, reported the communications officer. Sao Paulo and Cairo teams report similar success. In orbit, Captain Xen4 received the alarming reports with mounting dread. 3 scout ships had gone dark simultaneously. This was not the behavior of a primitive species facing superior technology. This was strategy. Impose planetary communications blackout, he ordered. Cut off all their transmission capabilities. His communications officer worked the controls, then looked up in confusion. Sir, their global network continues to function despite our interference. Impossible. Increase power to the disruptors. Sir, the officer hesitated. They're not using anything we can disrupt. We're detecting patterns consistent with primitive radio waves, mechanical signals, even variations in light intensity from reflective surfaces. N4 stared at the view screen, watching as more landing parties reported finding empty cities while his ships continued to disappear. For the first time in his career, he felt something alien to his species' psychology. Uncertainty. They knew we were coming, he whispered. Somehow, they were prepared. This is suicide, Captain XN4 announced to his command staff. We end this primitive resistance now. The command deck view screen displayed the massive EMP generator, a weapon reserved for rebellions on already conquered worlds. Its deployment against an unsubdued planet violated 17 sections of the Imperial Conquest Code, but XN4 had moved beyond adherence to protocol. The pulse will render all electrical systems on the planet inoperable, Tactical Officer Drenmack explained. Their communications, defenses, and basic infrastructure will collapse simultaneously. Execute. 10 forward. The weapon discharge, sending cascading waves of electromagnetic disruption that engulfed the planet in seconds. Across Earth, power grids failed, communications ceased, and electronic devices died. XN4 allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Begin landing operations in all major population centers. Let us see how these humans strategize without their technology. 12 hours later, his satisfaction had curdled into disbelief. Explain, he demanded, watching new power signatures blooming across the planet's surface. They're improvising, sir, Science Officer Velnar reported, her discomfort evident. They've created rudimentary electrical systems using salvaged components. They're powering essential systems using everything from vehicle batteries to manually operated generators. That's not possible, XN4 insisted. Planetary recovery from an Imperial-grade EMP requires months of infrastructure rebuilding. Nevertheless, sir, we're detecting operational communications and defense systems. They've even incorporated components from our captured vessels into their makeshift technology. In a secured bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, 16-year-old Marcus Chen sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by dismantled alien technology. His fingers moved with preternatural speed, connecting components that, according to conventional physics, shouldn't interface. Elena Zhao watched in amazement as the young man worked. Marcus rarely spoke, struggled with basic social interaction, and had been diagnosed with severe autism at age 3. He was also, perhaps, humanity's greatest hope. He sees patterns the rest of us miss, explained Dr. Singh. When we showed him the propulsion system from the captured scout ship, he became fixated on a recurring sequence in the power distribution matrix. Marcus suddenly looked up. It's wrong, he said simply. What's wrong? Elena asked gently. The math. They copy without understanding. Generation 57 error propagation. He returned to his work, connecting a modified car alternator to an alien power cell. Dr. Singh lowered his voice. He believes the Zarkalians have been replicating their technology for so many generations that they've incorporated flaws without recognizing them. The system works, but at perhaps 30% of its theoretical efficiency. And he can fix it, Elena asked incredulously. Not fix. Reinvent. Dr. Singh's eyes gleamed with excitement. He's creating a hybrid system based on understanding the underlying principles rather than following their established patterns. Hours later, Marcus stepped back from his creation. Try now, he said quietly. The team activated the modified propulsion system. Energy readings immediately spiked to 3 times the original output while consuming less power. The implications were staggering. This single breakthrough could revolutionize human power generation and propulsion technology overnight. Aboard the Zarkalian flagship, alarms blared as sensors detected the energy signature. "That's impossible," Senfor whispered, staring at the readings. "That's theoretical maximum efficiency for a quantum displacement drive. Our best scientists have deemed it unachievable." In her small laboratory aboard the science vessel, junior researcher Mira Len studied the same readings with growing excitement rather than alarm. For years, she had submitted proposals for experimental modifications to the Empire's drive systems, only to be rejected for unnecessary creative deviation from established patterns. Now, incredibly, a primitive species had achieved in days what the Empire had dismissed as impossible for centuries. Miralyn glanced at the security monitors. The command staff was focused on military responses. With trembling hands, she encoded a brief message containing her theoretical improvements and broadcast it on a frequency she knew the humans were monitoring. The message contained a single line: "Your solution is elegant but unstable above 70% capacity. Try this instead." For the first time in her career, Miralyn committed the ultimate Zarkalian heresy: independent thought. "Traitor!" Captain Senfor's voice echoed through the command deck. The display showed Miralyn's image, her personnel file marked with a pulsing red border. "She has shared classified technological information with the humans." The command staff remained silent, their rigid training preventing any visible reaction to this unprecedented breach of Imperial protocol. "Deploy hunter drones to every population center," Senfor ordered. "I want her found. And to ensure the humans understand the price of harboring a traitor, prepare the orbital bombardment sequence for their largest population centers." Officer Velinar hesitated. "Sir, High Command has not authorized planetary destruction." "I am not requesting destruction," Senfor replied coldly. "Merely motivation." Before the order could be implemented, the communications officer suddenly straightened. "Captain, priority transmission from High Command. Oversight Officer Drenvor has been dispatched to evaluate our mission progress and will arrive within 12 hours. Higzenfor's ridge crest flattened against his skull, a sign of profound distress among his species. Oversight officers wielded the Empire's ultimate authority, with the power to relieve commanders and implement summary punishment. "Acknowledged," he managed. "Delay the bombardment until after the Oversight officer's arrival." What Senfor couldn't know, was that Oversight Officer Drenvor had a particular interest in this mission. Drenvor was Miralyn's parent creator, and had secretly preserved their offspring's unorthodox research for years. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a repurposed CERN facility, Miralyn hunched over a holographic display alongside Alina and her team. The alien scientist had removed her atmospheric suit, exposing her gray skin to Earth's air. "Aren't you worried about having an allergic reaction like your ambassador?" Dr. Singh asked. "That wasn't an allergic reaction," Miralyn replied, her translator producing flawless English. "It was neurochemical withdrawal." She projected a diagram of Zarkalian physiology. "All ships and installations in the Empire are atmospherically infused with trace elements that maintain our hierarchical psychology. Your atmosphere temporarily disrupted Ambassador Trelvia's conditioning." The implication struck Elena immediately. "You're saying your entire species is drugged into compliance?" "For approximately 8,000 years, Miralyn confirmed. "After great expansion wars nearly destroy our civilization, the ruling caste implemented neurochemical conditioning to ensure social stability. Most Zarkalians don't know this history. Each generation becomes more rigid, more hierarchical." "But you're different," Alina observed. "A genetic anomaly makes me partially resistant. I spent my career hiding my resistance while seeking answers." Miralyn's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Being here, breathing your atmosphere, I'm experiencing emotional responses that have no translation in my language." Jackson Cole, the Special Forces operator, leaned forward. "Like what?" "Hope," Miralyn said simply. And something else. A desire for your species to succeed where mine has failed. The facility's alarm system suddenly blared. On the main screen, a transmission appeared. Oversight Officer Drenvor requesting direct communication with Earth's leaders. It's a trap, Cole warned. They're trying to locate our command centers. No, Miralyn whispered, staring at the screen. That's my parent creator. Elena made a swift decision. Establish communication, but through proxied channels only. When Drenvor's face appeared, Miralyn involuntarily stepped forward. The oversight officer's eyes widened slightly, the most extreme emotional display permitted by their conditioning. I request asylum, Drenvor stated without preamble. The Empire is fracturing. Miralyn's transmission about human innovation was intercepted by civilian networks. Rebellions have erupted on 3 core worlds. Rebellions? Miralyn's voice trembled. That's not possible. Your broadcast contained more than technical specifications, Drenvor explained. It carried traces of your unconditioned brainwave patterns. When distributed across the network, it created a cascading failure in the conditioning systems. Lower castes are questioning their place for the first time in millennia. Elena exchanged glances with her team. So your empire is experiencing a revolution because of a thought virus. Precisely, Drenvor confirmed. And Captain Xenfor knows his career is finished if he returns without victory. He plans to deploy the planet cracker weapon, regardless of my authority. Elena's blood ran cold. Planet cracker. A singularity generator capable of collapsing your planet's core. There is no conventional defense against it. For the first time since the conflict began, Elena saw no strategic countermove. Miralyn stepped forward. There might be a way. The modified propulsion system we developed. With specific alterations, it could generate a controlled wormhole. To do what? Elena asked. To redirect the planet cracker energy back upon itself, Miralyn replied. But the calculations would have to be perfect, and the technology is untested. The risk of catastrophic failure is significant. The wormhole generator is our only option, Elena stated to the Emergency Council of World Leaders, gathered via secure transmission. We have less than 6 hours before the Zarkalian flagship can position for optimal planet cracker deployment. On screens around the war room, grim faces nodded in agreement. No conventional weapon in Earth's arsenal could penetrate the flagship's defenses. What are our chances of success? Asked the UN Secretary-General. Dr. Singh gestured to the complex equations covering the digital whiteboard. The modified propulsion system can theoretically generate a stable wormhole, but maintaining precise coordinates during energy redirection will be challenging. He means impossible, Marcus Chen interjected, looking up from his tablet. The teenager rarely spoke in groups, but when he did, everyone listened. Requires manual adjustments. Human operator. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implication sank in. A suicide mission, Elena said quietly. I should go, Miralyn offered immediately. This is my people's technology, my responsibility. No, Elena countered. You're the only one who understands Zarkalian systems well enough to guide us if anything goes wrong. I'll do it. Neither of you will. Drenvor's authoritative voice cut through the debate. I am the logical choice. My neural patterns are already conditioned for precise sequential operations under extreme stress. The retrofitted wormhole generator was installed in a shuttle from the captured scout ship. It looked like a hybrid monster of alien technology and Earth ingenuity. Gleaming Zarkalian alloys interconnected with copper wiring, car batteries, and even a modified microwave transformer. As final preparations were made, Elena approached Drenvor privately. There's something you're not telling us, she said. About the Zarkalian Empire. The oversight officer's 4 eyes fixed on her with unexpected intensity. You are perceptive, Commander Zhao. Yes, there is more. Drenvor hesitated, then continued. The Empire was not always as you see it now. 12,000 years ago, we were explorers, scientists, artists. We celebrated individual innovation and creative thought. What happened? Success. As our territory expanded, centralized control became prioritized over individual freedom. The neurochemical conditioning was initially temporary, used only in crisis situations. Then it became standard for military personnel. Then for government officials. Finally, for all citizens from birth. You're risking everything to undo this, Alina observed. The empire I serve is a corruption of what we once were, Drenvor replied. Perhaps, through your species, we can remember what we have forgotten. Alarms blared through the facility. On the main screen, satellite imagery showed the Zarkalian flagship moving into position. The massive vessel's forward section was opening like a blooming flower, revealing the planet cracker at its core, a swirling vortex of barely contained energy. Final preparations accelerated. The shuttle was positioned at the designated launch point, its cobbled-together wormhole generator humming with increasing intensity. As Drenvor prepared to board, a technician rushed in. Sabotage. Someone's damaged the control linkages. Security footage revealed a Zarkalian loyalist who had infiltrated the facility disguised as a human collaborator. The damage was significant. The system could still generate a wormhole, but the automated guidance was destroyed. Manual control is now the only option, Dr. Singh confirmed grimly. Someone must physically remain at the controls to maintain proper alignment during energy redirection. Drenvor, Alina, and Mira Len exchanged glances, each silently volunteering. Coordinate check, the launch controller called out. Planet cracker charging at 60%. Estimated firing in 7 minutes. Drenvor made the decision, physically restraining both Alina and Mira Len with surprising strength before sealing the shuttle hatch. What are you doing? Alina demanded over the comm. Ensuring both our civilizations have a future, Drenvor replied calmly. Mira Len contains the unconditioned thought patterns that can transform our society. You, Commander Zhao, represent the adaptive leadership humans will need in the challenging days ahead. The shuttle launched, racing toward its intercept point as the planet cracker weapon reached 90% charge. There's something else you should know, Drenvor transmitted. The wormhole, once stabilized by the weapon's energy, won't collapse as predicted. It will become permanent, a gateway between distant points in space. You knew this? Alina asked. I suspected. Where it leads, I cannot say. But whatever comes through, both our civilizations must face it together. The planet cracker fired. From Earth's surface, it appeared as a blinding beam of light, striking upward toward the small shuttle. For one terrible moment, the beam engulfed the vessel completely. Then, impossibly, the energy reversed course, flowing back through a swirling distortion in space, directly into the Zarkalian flagship. The massive vessel disappeared in a flash of light too intense to observe directly. When vision cleared, the flagship was gone. But where it had been, a swirling portal remained, shimmering against the backdrop of stars. 48 hours after the destruction of the Zarkalian flagship, Earth remained transfixed by the swirling wormhole in orbit. Military satellites, hastily repositioned, monitored the anomaly continuously, while scientists debated its stability and significance. No one expected what emerged from it. Contact, shouted the orbital monitoring officer. Massive vessel approaching through the wormhole. The vessel that appeared dwarfed even the Zarkalian flagship. Unlike the crystalline symmetry of Imperial design, this ship was a patchwork of different architectural styles and materials, as if dozens of distinct technologies had been fused together into one functioning whole. Alina Zhao, newly appointed as Earth's chief negotiator, despite her military background, stood in the United Nations chamber as representatives from 12 formerly subjugated species arrived via transport beam. The sight was overwhelming. Beams of every conceivable form, from crystalline entities that floated above the ground to massive arthropod-like creatures that required special platforms to support their weight. We are the Coalition of Free Worlds, announced their lead representative, a tall humanoid with iridescent skin. For millennia, we have monitored the Zarkalian Empire's expansion, offering sanctuary to refugees and building our strength in secret. When we detected the unique energy signature of your wormhole technology, we recognized an opportunity. Opportunity for what? Elena asked cautiously. Resistance. The being's voice carried an undercurrent of tightly controlled emotion. You have accomplished what no other species has managed, delivering a significant defeat to the Empire and creating a stable wormhole that bypasses their defensive perimeter. The chamber erupted in multilingual discussion as the coalition representatives began talking over each other. Elena studied their interactions with growing concern. Despite their unified arrival, there was little cohesion in their approach. The humans must share their wormhole technology. We should strike immediately at the heart of the Empire. First, we must establish a defensive perimeter around Earth. Elena caught Miralin's eye across the chamber. The Zarkalian scientist subtly tapped her temple, the gesture they had established to indicate detection of hierarchical thinking patterns. These supposedly free species were falling into the same competitive, zero-sum thinking that had corrupted the Zarkalians millennia ago. Before Elena could intervene, new alarms sounded. The main screen showed a fleet of Zarkalian vessels approaching the wormhole from the other side. Imperial reinforcements, one of the coalition representatives hissed. They seek to reclaim control of the portal. The coalition delegates immediately began arguing about defensive strategy, each species advocating for an approach that maximized their own importance or safety. Elena's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. The chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to the human representative. This is exactly why the Zarkalians dominated for so long, she said. They exploited division. They understood that species in competition cannot stand against unified conquest. She moved to the center of the chamber. Earth will not join a military alliance that repeats the same patterns of dominance and hierarchy. Instead, we propose something unprecedented, an interspecies democratic assembly, where decisions are made by consensus rather than force. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the delegates. Impossible, stated a methane-breathing representative. Our biological imperatives are too different. Our cognitive frameworks cannot align, added another. Miralyn stepped forward, activating a holographic display. I've been studying ancient Zarkalian records that predate our empire's corruption. They contain statistical analyses from thousands of worlds, showing that integrated, diverse ecosystems consistently outperform homogeneous ones over evolutionary timescales. Diversity isn't an obstacle, it's an advantage. The data scrolled through complex simulations, extinction events, and recovery patterns. Even without understanding the specifics, the pattern was clear. Systems with greater diversity showed greater resilience. This applies to civilizations as well, Miralyn continued. The early Zarkalian explorers documented this pattern but chose to ignore it in favor of control and efficiency. A deafening alarm interrupted the presentation. On the main screen, the approaching Zarkalian fleet had divided. The larger contingent continued toward the wormhole, while a smaller group had somehow slipped through, now on a direct course for Earth and the coalition vessel. They're attempting a pincer maneuver, Elena realized, attacking from both sides of the wormhole simultaneously. As the delegates erupted into panic, Elena made eye contact with the coalition's lead representative. We have minutes to decide. Do we fight as separate species with separate agendas, or do we try something new? The representative hesitated, then nodded slowly. How would this democratic defense work? We share everything, Elena said simply. All tactical information, all technology, all decision-making. No secrets, no hierarchies. For a tense moment, the chamber was silent. Then, one by one, the delegates stepped forward. 1 year after the battle for Earth, Elena Zhou stood at the central podium aboard the Nexus, a massive space station constructed at the mouth of the stable wormhole. Before her sat the inaugural assembly of the Galactic Confederation, representatives from 23 species arranged in concentric circles rather than hierarchical tiers. The station itself was a testament to collaborative engineering, each section incorporating unique design elements from member species, creating something no single civilization could have envisioned alone. Even its power systems reflected this philosophy, drawing energy from 12 different technologies working in harmony. 1 year ago, we faced extinction, Elena began, her voice carrying through translation fields that conveyed not just words but emotional contexts across species barriers. Instead, we discovered something the Zarkalian Empire spent millennia trying to suppress, that the universe doesn't favor uniformity, but adaptation through diversity. She gestured to the Zarkalian delegation, where a reformed Captain Xenfor sat alongside Miralyn. The former commander's presence had been controversial, but the assembly had ultimately accepted that reconciliation required facing former enemies. Xenfor's physical appearance had changed dramatically. Without the neurochemical conditioning, his ridge crest had softened, and his posture had relaxed from its rigid military bearing. More striking was the expression in his 4 eyes, a complexity of emotion previously unseen in his species. As Elena continued her address, the station's sensors triggered an urgent alert. On the main display, a massive anomaly appeared at the edge of the solar system, a distortion in spacetime unlike anything in their databases. "The Harvester comes," whispered an ancient delegate from the Nyx Collective, a species so old they claimed to remember the early days of galactic civilization. The assembly erupted in panic. Ancient legends from a dozen worlds spoke of the Harvester, a mysterious force that periodically swept through the galaxy, testing civilizations and destroying those found wanting. No species had clear records of surviving an encounter, only myths passed down through generations. "How long?" Elena demanded of the science team. 3 days at current approach velocity, came the response. In the chaos that followed, military options were proposed and discarded. The combined fleet of the Confederation was substantial, but historical records suggested conventional weapons would be useless against the Harvester. It was Marcus Chen, now 17 and serving as Earth's youngest ever scientific advisor, who proposed the radical solution. "We don't fight," he said simply, looking up from his calculations. "We communicate." Under his guidance, engineers from 17 species worked without rest, creating something unprecedented. A neural translation network that could bridge not just language but fundamental consciousness patterns across radically different biological substrates. "A harvester isn't a natural phenomenon," Marcus explained. "Its movement patterns show purpose, intelligence, but intelligence unlike any we recognize. When the harvester arrived, a vast, shifting entity that seemed to exist partially in higher dimensions, the Confederation deployed not weapons, but the translation network. For 72 tense hours, the system processed and adapted, seeking common patterns between Confederation consciousness and the alien visitor. Then, unexpectedly, Miralyn made a breakthrough. Studying the Harvester's energy patterns, she discovered fragments that resonated with ancient Zarkalian code structures. "There's a connection," she realized. "The mathematical foundation is similar to our earliest programming language." This tenuous link allowed the first meaningful exchange with the Harvester. Through the translation network, its purpose became clear. It was not a destroyer but a guardian, created eons ago by precursor civilizations to prevent any single evolutionary path from dominating the galaxy. The Harvester had periodically culled civilizations that became too homogeneous, too rigid, exactly what the Zarkalian Empire had been becoming before humanity's intervention. It preserved cosmic diversity by preventing imperial homogeneity. What it now encountered in the Confederation was something it had never seen before: diverse species voluntarily unified without surrendering their uniqueness, a system that valued difference rather than eliminating it. For the first time in its immeasurably long existence, the Harvester hesitated in its judgment. Through the neural interface, Elena addressed the ancient entity directly. "We offer not submission, but partnership. Join us in preserving the diversity you were created to protect." The response came not in words, but in shifting patterns of energy that the translation network rendered as tentative acceptance. Standing on the observation deck later, Alina watched as the Harvester began integrating with the Confederation systems, sharing knowledge of regions of space previously unknown. Beside her stood Xen4, his expression contemplative. "I once believed strength came from uniformity and control," the former captain said quietly. "I was blind to the power that lies in difference." "Pride diminishes when we recognize the value in others," Alina replied. Below them, representatives from dozens of worlds, including newly liberated Zarkalian colonies, prepared for the first joint expedition into unexplored space. The mission would be led by a council where each species contributed their unique perspective to decision-making. "We're still learning how to do this," Alina acknowledged. "There will be conflicts, misunderstandings, but fewer with each passing day," Xen4 observed, "as we learn to see through each other's eyes." As the expedition vessels departed, their designs as varied as the species that created them, Alina reflected on humanity's journey. In the end, our greatest contribution to the galaxy hadn't been technology or military strategy, but something more fundamental: the capacity to find unity without requiring uniformity. The stars awaited, and for the first time in galactic history, they would be explored by civilizations whose strength lay in their differences rather than their similarities.